Welcome back, Craig. So pleased to have you here again, this time with our educator hat on. So for any teachers, teaching assistants, SENCOs or school leaders joining us, Craig is an ASMR researcher and the founder of the ASMR University. His work on how soft sound and gentle vocal tone affect the nervous system has huge implications for the classroom. And that's exactly what we're going to explore today. This month at Hushaway, we're focusing on emotional regulation. And the question we're holding up to the classroom is the same one we asked our parents. Is your classroom hush enough? Not quiet, because quiet isn't realistic with 25 to 30 children, transitions, and a school day that moves really fast. But a hush. Is it kind? Is it predictable? Does it have a regulating sound? Is it something that every classroom can build in? We know teachers are already stretched. They're already managing behaviour. They're juggling more than any job description ever asked for. So this conversation isn't about adding to that. It's about giving you, as a teacher, something small that gives a lot back. So Craig, shall we dive straight in?
Yes, let's go for it.
The first area we're going to explore is the hidden cost of classroom sound on neurodivergent children. For an ADHD or autistic child, the classroom isn't just a learning space, it's actually a sound challenge. So, Craig, teachers often tell us that the hardest moments in the classroom aren't the learning moments, they're the transition moments. And a lot of what Hushaway has developed and created is to support those transition moments. So whether that's after break, after lunch, first thing in the morning, on the way home from school. What's happening in a neurodivergent child's auditory system during those moments, and why does it matter for regulation?
I think the way I would word what you're saying is that external transitions in a classroom lead to internal disruptions in the mind of a neurodivergent child. Routines and consistency are very important for all children, but can be more so important for neurodivergent children. So transitions in a classroom during the day at school, they're obviously necessary. We can't say, well, let's not do transitions. But it's important to be aware, and this is exactly what you're saying, that these are kind of the weakest link in a chain of events throughout a school day. And so it does start with, well, how are we going to deal with this? We can't do away with transitions. So it starts with awareness, and that classrooms have I guess the term might be a high sensory load for some individuals. A classroom is going to be filled with 20 voices, 25 voices, 30 voices. Maybe they're all talking at the same time. Chairs just seem to love to scrape on the floors. There's footsteps as people move around. People are dropping things. Then there's the heating system. There's noise leaking in from the corridors and the hallways. Neurodivergent children can adjust at times in these situations. So it's not that these situations are impossible, but I think it's important to understand why they are challenged. And one of the reasons is they have reduced filtering in their brains. It means that when they walk into this classroom, their brain is processing more of the sounds than the average child is. They're more aware of those sounds, and that can be overwhelming. So you know how anyone watches TV at night, you watch a TV program, no problem. Well, imagine now there's 40 TVs in front of you and each one has a different program. That's going to be overwhelming for you. And that's how a soundscape can be for neurodivergent children. Not only do they have reduced filtering where they're aware of more sounds, but they have increased sensitivity to sounds. Most children will react to loud sounds, but there are some children that react extremely more to loud sounds. It's called hyperacusis. It's just a fancy word that, though a loud sound can bother an average child a little bit, a loud sound can almost create mental and physical pain in a neurodivergent child. And they can't ignore it. The third aspect of a neurodivergent brain can involve dysregulation and emotional dysregulation. And a great example here is misophonia. Misophonia is an extreme negative reaction to specific sounds. But this is not about loud sounds. This is not about a book slamming on the floor or a chair suddenly tipping over. Instead, it's about a student just nearby who's chewing their food quietly or who's tapping their pencil on their desk. There's something about specific noises that in the brain of some neurodivergent children is processed as a threat. And the understanding is not clear. It's not known why you would process the tapping of a pencil or the chewing or a mouth sound as threatening, but their brains process it that way. And that's important to understand. This is the beginning of the awareness for the experience of some children. So what we really hope, what we really want to try is to begin to relabel the situation. That these are not problem children. They are simply misunderstood children. These children experience their environment differently than other children and probably differently than the teacher. So it makes sense that it can be hard to understand. The good news, though, is that although sound can be the problem in these environments, sound can also be the solution. Gentle and predictable sounds like ASMR sounds and certain soundscapes can help a child to regain control of their noisy environment. In my research survey, where we had over 20,000 individuals who experience ASMR, we asked within that survey, have you been clinically diagnosed with ADHD or autism? And we looked at this subset of these participants in our research study. And we were surprised to find out that 80% of adults who have ADHD or autism and who experience ASMR, they reported that they use ASMR content to reduce their stress. Now, this wasn't children, but it does provide a strong foundation that ASMR content may also be helpful for children to reduce their stress. So I guess overall, transition times in a classroom can be ideal time for a child to be allowed to do something a little bit different and helpful than perhaps some of the other children. And that may be as simple as giving them the opportunity to listen to a 3-minute relaxing soundscape, just to help them to relax and adjust during this transition.
And Craig, you've talked about how, voice is a sound in itself as well. So let's look at why in that classroom, a teacher's voice can be the most powerful sound in the room, because before a child processes what a teacher is saying, their nervous system is already responding to how she or he is saying that. So your research on soft vocal tone and ASMR has big implications for educators. Can you talk about what happens in a child's nervous system when the adult in the room speaks in a very warm, low, steady voice versus when they speak quickly or sharply?
There's a saying in the ASMR community, and you hear it in other places also. It's not what you say, it's how you say it. And it just applies extra particularly in the ASMR community. When people hear someone else's voice, their brain initially and quickly processes the tone and pace of what they're saying before their brain processes the words and the meaning of what they're saying. And I can kind of give you a simple example to highlight this. So imagine someone suddenly steps in front of you. They came out of nowhere and they are screaming at you. Their voice is really loud. It's an angry tone. But what they're saying is that you just won $5. What state is your body going to go into first? Is it going to react to the information they're giving you that you won $5? Or is your body going to react to the tone and what you're hearing and how your brain is processing just the way that they're saying this? Luckily, though, of course, tone and pace can also help to calm someone for the opposite reason. So with ASMR audio, the core methods are talking softly, talking slowly, and with a caring tone. We did brain scans where we had some individuals lie in a brain scan machine, watch ASMR videos, and we looked to see what areas of their brain were more active when they were being relaxed by ASMR videos. And what our results showed us is that the regions of the brain that are relaxed by ASMR videos are the same regions that are relaxed when a real person is in front of someone being kind, being caring, being comforting, talking in gentle voice. The good news here is that our brains are not really that great, subconsciously at least, at telling the difference between the relaxing voices and sounds in a recording versus those that might occur in real life by a real person right in front of us. Our brains just lean really heavy on the tone and the pace and the style of what someone is saying. And I think it makes sense that this has resulted from social evolution, that we need, meaning our brains need, or we need, a quick and easy way to determine if someone we've just met or someone we're interacting with is a threat or they're not a threat. And you don't want to wait to process their words. Your brain is going to make that determination before they finish their first sentence. So yeah, if you talk loudly, you talk quickly and in a disjointed way, whether this is to a stranger or this might be a teacher, of how they're addressing a child. That loud, quick, disjointed method of talking will automatically alert someone's brain. And that alert is ticking in the back of their brain and it's basically telling them to run away. Now, they may not actually run away, but that's what the alert signal is. That's what the fear is telling someone to do. But if a teacher talks softly, gently, and smoothly, then that helps to subconsciously relax someone else's brain. And when we say relax, what the real benefit of relaxation is, it's your brain's way of telling you, don't run away. This soft-speaking person is probably going to be helpful for you. So don't run away from them. So how do you kind of integrate this in a wider way in a classroom? It is a challenge. Yelling can get attention. There are ways to manage children where you need to raise your voice above the din and the noise of a classroom to get attention. So, of course, yelling can get attention. It's just not the ideal way for every child. And even though neurodivergent children have this awareness of all the sounds around them, that's not true 100% of the time. A neurodivergent child can get into a hyper-focused situation. If they're engaged with an activity with their hands, if they're engaged with another activity with another individual, their brain can hyper-focus. And so a teacher who's saying something behind them may not be heard at all. And this leads to this misunderstanding that that child is being rebellious. They're not being rebellious. They're hyper-focused on what they're currently engaged in. So one thing that you want to do, especially with neurodivergent children, is not to keep raising your voice to get their attention, but walk around and put yourself in the child's line of sight. That will break that hyper-focus if it's happening. And then just calmly repeat your request. You'll probably be really surprised at, wow, how effective that is, because they weren't being rebellious. Overall, I'd say that neurodivergent children are likely to best respond to voices that are gentle, they're low volume, they have a caring tone, because what it's conveying to that child subconsciously through process of social evolution is that you are trying to help them, not hurt them. And sure enough, there have been some recent research studies that show that this approach results in 22% fewer behavioral incidents in a classroom. I'd, of course, love to see that number even higher, but it is some data that does support this concept that it does work.
Let's just go back and talk about transitions again, because I really believe that those transition moments is where Hushaway earns its keep. Transitions are almost the hidden cliff edge of a school day, and sound can be that bridge. So, Craig, we're piloting Hushaway in a number of schools with a bit of a audio reset in those transitions, be it after break or after lunch. What does the research suggest that you're aware of about timing, content, and delivery of that kind of intervention? And why should a teacher take 3 minutes out of a lesson to use one of those?
Yeah, I think it's good to come back to transitions because they are such a challenge. And a transition is more than a location change, which is how we view it on the outside. For neurodivergent children, it's a disruption to their mental state. And it often shifts their mindset or their nervous system into a sympathetic state. And that's just the scientific, nerdy way to say that their heart rate is going to increase, their blood pressure will increase, and they will release stress hormones during these transitions. In other words, a transition can make a child go into that classic fight or flight state. And obviously, a child who's going into this I suddenly feel threatened state is not going to be ideal for a productive classroom setting. This is the clear challenge. So we need to have an understanding and a methodology for helping those children shift back to what's called a parasympathetic state, but it is a relaxed state. And luckily, multiple studies have shown that ASMR content can help to do this. In our own brain scan study, we showed that the brain shifts into a more relaxed state within seconds. And this is part of the surprising aspect also, is that it's not like you need to wait minutes or hours after a child is exposed to some kind of relaxing audio soundscape. It is within seconds. We saw this within a brain scan machine. And I think I mentioned this before that other studies have also looked at other physiological aspects when individuals are exposed to ASMR content. And sure enough, their heart rates are reduced. Their blood pressure is reduced. So ASMR audio content can be a helpful tool for transitions. So like you mentioned, Nikki, granting a child a 3-minute audio reset with a gentle and calming soundscape can help to get that child and keep that child and everyone else involved in that classroom on track after transition. And I have seen a recent meta-analysis that looked at a lot of studies, and they come to one conclusion that brief audio interventions like the ones we're talking about right now were more helpful than longer mindfulness sessions. And here is how I differentiate between ASMR as a relaxation technique and mindfulness as a relaxation technique. With ASMR, something else is getting you into that relaxed state. You're not relying on your own discipline and ability to do it. Whereas with mindfulness, it usually is driven by the individual. They initiate it, they drive it. And it just comes down to some individuals are not good at doing that. It may work for some individuals, but it may not for others. And so they need this external stimuli to drive their relaxation state. So I think the big picture here is just that these audio resets, these audio breaks are a small investment for helping transition time. And they really do have a big return for everyone involved.
And then looking at that child who really can't cope, and without singling them out, because sometimes teachers tell us that child's with headphones at the back of the room and they're opting out. Well, actually, they're not opting out; they're opting in. but to regulation. Craig, my question for you is, for that individual child who really struggles with that classroom soundscape, audio tools offered through headphones can be an absolute lifeline for them. But teachers worry about singling a child out. So, how can schools position these sound based regulation tools so that they're normalised rather than stigmatising?
I really agree with what you're saying, and I think a way to also say is that headphones should be reframed and seen as a tool than a flag. They're helping specific children to be part of a classroom. That's a helpful tool. The gentle ASMR sounds, which may be part of this, whether it's a hush white landscape or whatever is that audio source, it's helping them to stay calm, stay centered, and be productive in that classroom. Studies have even shown that those who don't experience ASMR are relaxed by ASMR content. And this was a surprising finding. It was, and I've seen this, it was one of the studies I'm thinking of, is the study done by Julia Puero in the UK. And she was the first investigator to show that when people watch ASMR videos, their heart rates and their blood pressure decrease. Well, she separated the groups into those that experience ASMR and those that don't experience ASMR. The surprising finding was both groups had a reduction in heart rate. So it's likely that using gentle soundscapes in like a 3-minute audio reset would benefit most students, which means that maybe the headset isn't only on the one neurodivergent children, but everybody gets a headset. Everyone gets to enjoy a soothing soundscape that might help everyone even have a better transition, including the teacher. There was a recent study, it was just last year, where 73% of teachers reported that whole class audio regulation tools, meaning the whole class is involved, reduced behavior incidents more effectively than individual interventions. The key point is that it may not be about one student being singled out, when it might be something that can be beneficial for other students or all the students. I think the suggestion around all this is to keep in mind this potential benefit, especially during transitions, for relaxing audio. And also, I think there's going to be a challenge for teachers of how they allow this in a classroom. So I'm maybe jumping to the point of where every student has a pair of headsets might be too quick. Maybe it does start with just this one student in the classroom. They have a headset. But I think it's important for the teacher to explain to the rest of the class about those headphones. Don't just let that student sit back there with those headphones that, sure, all the administrators and teachers agree that it's important, without explaining that headset and those headphones to the other students. And here is what I think might be a really helpful way to frame this, is that you explain to the other students that the headset for that other student is similar to how eyeglasses with some of the other students help them see better, how hearing aids for some students who may not be in that classroom, but I'm sure they all know other students with some hearing aids or adults. And also asthma inhalers. Chances are there are a couple of students in that classroom that have an asthma inhaler, and it's something that's important to be nearby and can critically help them at certain times. I think the message a student wants to get to that individual and to a classroom is that students and these individuals shouldn't feel shame for using headphones, just like anyone who's using eyeglasses, hearing aids, or an asthma inhaler shouldn't feel shame.
Those are really good reference points. I didn't look at it that way. But of course, anything that we need to make that child's day better, easier, and to help their learning is a good thing. So back to that overarching question then, is your classroom hush enough? So we're not saying to educators that you need a quiet classroom, but it'd be great to have those kind of hush-shaped moments during the day where possible. So, Craig, if a teacher is listening and they want to ask themselves honestly, is my classroom hush enough? What should they actually be looking for? Because it's not about silence. So, what is it?
Yeah, you're right about that. Silence would be not only unrealistic, but in a classroom, it can be detrimental. It would prevent some key aspects of learning. I'm a university professor. We have these key moments in a classroom where they break out into discussion groups, where they're doing activities. There's going to be sound and noise involved with that, but that's productive noise. You don't want to stop all of that. Here, I think, is what I might view as the minimal starting point, which is a classroom, meaning a teacher, the administrators, should do an audit of classrooms for unnecessary and disruptive sounds. Can the chairs be made not to make that scraping sound? Can lids on things and drawers have those little felt pads put in that so that when students close them, they don't make a loud bang sound? And really just a basic principle that there is no yelling in a classroom, not by the teacher, not by the students, not by anyone. And what a teacher wants to do, and I'm sure most of them are doing this already, is use their own gentle voice to set the tone and the expectations in the classroom. Because it just benefits everyone, not just the neurodivergent child, whether there's one or two there, but everyone in the classroom. In addition to that, a classroom can also have dedicated hush moments. So let's start off with something a little bit easier. Focus on these certain moments, which are probably transition moments. So these can just be 3-minute long hush moments and not silent moments, but think of them as softer soundscape moments that incorporate intentional, gentle sounds. And these moments, these targeted moments to begin with, might be the start of the day, after a break, and before home time, like the most disruptive, challenging times. There was a recent pilot study that showed that schools that adopt this concept of brief daily audio regulation routines had 31% reductions in behavior referrals. So that's promising. Maybe overall, just to be fair about these expectations is that, the old saying, like Rome, a hush classroom won't be built in a day. But being able to incorporate those brief 3-minute resets during those key disruptive times of transition could be an easy, simple, and helpful start.
Thank you. I think, what strikes me most from this conversation, albeit quite short, is just how much of what you've shared is already within a teacher's reach. So the voice they use, the first 30 seconds after break, that 3-minute audio reset that the whole class can use. And none of this requires new equipment or a curriculum overhaul. It just requires some permission to slow down for a moment so that the next 40, 45 minutes can actually work. And the piece I want to land for educators listening is this. The child who can't cope with the classroom soundscape isn't being difficult. Their nervous system is doing exactly what it's wired to do in an environment that's too much. And the behavior that you're seeing is the symptom. The sound environment is one of the most accessible places to intervene. And what Hush Away does differently, and Craig, you touched on this beautifully throughout, is that it doesn't ask the child to find calm. So the calm tools that require attention, compliance, or cognitive engagement go offline the moment a child is overwhelmed. So Hush Away works before that point. It meets the nervous system where it is. So, Craig, thank you for everything. We'll link your work, Brain Tingles, your book, and the ASMR University within the notes for any teachers who want to tap into the work that you're doing. And to the educators listening, your classroom doesn't need to be quiet. It just needs 3 minutes of hush, or should I say 3 minutes of hush away. So that's where we start. Until next time, find peace in the little signs. Thank you.